the first liquidators. The term liquidator is derived from the Russian verb likvidator, which means to eliminate, or to eliminate the consequences of an accident. The initial phase of the Chernobyl cleanup effort comprised the first day in the immediate aftermath of the explosion of the No. 4 reactor, leading up to the evacuation of the town of Pripyat 3 miles away. This first round of liquidators included those who responded just after the explosion occurred, those in the control room and various chambers of the reactor itself, as well as firefighters who responded during the early hours of that fateful morning. Firefighters from Fire Station No. 2 of the Chernobyl plant comprised the very first responders to what was assumed to be an electrical fire on the roof of No. 3 reactor. Ominously, they wore no protective clothing, and none had dosimetric equipment to measure radiation levels. Once the fires on the roof were under control many hours later, a group of firemen from the Pripyat Brigade climbed into the ruins of the reactor hall to aim their hoses on the glowing crater of the core itself, where the graphite was burning at temperatures of more than 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. These firemen were exposed to higher levels of radiation than even the victims of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima at the end of World War II. Some military units also arrived at the scene within the first day of the disaster. One soldier, Sergei Bondarenko, would later testify the following. The first day after the accident was a mess. No one knew what to do. The early phase, the mass liquidators. The so-called early phase ranges from the end of the evacuation of Pripyat to the end of the construction of the sarcophagus around the reactor in November 1986, 7 months in total. This phase included the largest group of liquidators, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, many of them conscripted or forced to participate. This group was put to work on a diverse range of dangerous tasks dealing with the decontamination and cleanup efforts in and around Chernobyl. If radiation found its way into the area's water supplies, the fallout would amplify the catastrophe significantly. 400 miners were brought in to excavate under the reactor to stop the meltdown. The miners concluded their digging of the needed 551-foot-long tunnel below the reactor on June 24, 1986, 60 days after the disaster. They even stripped naked, working in temperatures exceeding 122 degrees Fahrenheit to get the job done. Another group of liquidators was the so-called men on the roof. Radio-controlled vehicles, including a lunar vehicle from the USSR's doomed lunar program, were initially used to clean up the debris on the roof of No. 3 reactor, but all the machines failed as the radiation corroded and destroyed their electronic circuitry. Therefore, the cleanup crew was forced to use manpower. This particular crew was given the nickname Bio-Robots. The debris on the roof had to literally be removed by hand. Almost all these bio-robot liquidators were 35 to 40-year-old reservists called up by the armed forces who were given no choice in their assignment. The men were instructed to run onto the roof, throw as much radioactive debris and dust onto a shovel as they could carry, run to the side and lob it over the edge, then make a dash for the interior and hope for safety. They had a mere 90 seconds to achieve this. General Tarakanov ordered these men to remove the lead sheets covering the walls of government subcommittee bureaus to make them into rudimentary protective clothing. However, this lead gear could only be worn once, as it absorbed too much radioactivity. Many soldiers fashioned a fig leaf out of lead that they inserted between 2 layers of underwear. They also wore a lead cap as headgear and slipped lead-padded soles into their boots. These soldiers lived in tent cities all around the 30-mile zone of alienation, the exclusion zone that encompassed Chernobyl, Pripyat, and surrounding forests and villages. Many soldiers were tasked with using bulldozers and other earth-moving vehicles to level the highly irradiated and charred forest land in the zone. Miles of pine trees had died due to the extreme levels of radiation in what liquidators dubbed the Red Forest. These too had to be cleared and then buried. Following the clearings, convoys of trucks would sweep in, coating all the ground with a sticky solution that suppressed dust. These same trucks would be used to decontaminate all the buildings, roads, and other structures in the zone in continuous convoys that lasted for months. Copious amounts of the same solution were used, which was called burda, which means molasses. Hundreds of these lead-protected trucks were involved in the liquidation. However, each one had to be buried after just a few weeks of use due to the high levels of radiation. A numbers game. The final liquidators. No exact number of liquidators has ever been established. Such was the breadth and scope of the containment effort and cleanup operations at Chernobyl. The official All-Union Distribution Register of the USSR, as compiled from 1986 to 1989, puts the total number of liquidators involved at 293,100. The report from the Russian National Medical Dosimetric Registry quotes 168,000 liquidators from Russia alone, with 123,536 liquidators from Ukraine and 63,500 liquidators from Belarus. This equated to around 355,000. Bear in mind that those were just 3 of the 15 Soviet Socialist republics that comprised the USSR, and that liquidators were sent from all over the Union. Another conservative estimate is that at least 300,000 to 350,000 people were directly involved in the cleanup operations, although the meaning of directly involved is in itself problematic and open to debate. A report by the Nuclear Energy Agency quotes a figure of up to 800,000. The international conference titled One Decade After Chernobyl refers to about 200,000 liquidators who worked in Chernobyl during the period of 1986 to 1987, and estimated the total number of people registered as involved in activities relating to alleviating the consequences of the accident as between 600,000 and 800,000. Interestingly, it's estimated that nearly 75% of the liquidators were aged between 30 to 44, and nearly 95% were men. All, save for a few foreign volunteer scientists, were Soviet citizens. Regarding radiation levels, the liquidators were exposed to an average of 120 millisieverts of radiation, about 1,200 times the amount from an X-ray. The fatalities, deformities, and other health complications that plagued the liquidators in the ensuing years became the tragic cost of mounting such an effort without the proper knowledge, equipment, or protocol.